Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode number 28. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we are talking about the path to partnership. So I have a lot of associates that have reached out asking, how do they make sure that they are on the right track and that all of the work that they are putting in will actually pay off so that they can make partner. Now, I should say that the easiest way to make partner is to start your own firm. And easy is probably not the right word, maybe fastest. The fastest way to make partner is to start your own firm. But that's not really what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about if you are at a law firm, you come in as an associate, maybe you come in even as of counsel, but you're looking at how to transition to partnership level. Now, I am also going to be talking mostly from the perspective of a large law firm, but all of these concepts are still going to apply at really small law firms and boutiques, even if, there are only 2 or 3 owners and they started at the same time, but you're wanting to make partner. These are still going to be some good guideposts for you to follow in moving that forward, although it's going to look a little bit different for you. I will also say, if you're already a partner, I think this episode is going to help you understand why some associates get tripped up and don't have access to the information that you think they do. And even if you are in-house, what we're going to talk about today is still going to translate into how you also might look for opportunities to get advancements or promotions within your company. The concepts are general enough that you can take them and apply them to your situation. But if you are an associate at a large law firm, this is for you. Okay? All right. So I have so much to cover today. When I was outlining what this topic would look like, there's so much to say. But I've distilled it to 3 main topics. And if we have time, I'll cover a few others. But my guess is we won't get there. We'll just have to wait and do that on another episode. Okay, so there's basically 3 different principles that I want to talk about today. And then I will also break them down into a lot of nitty-gritty detail. All right, so here is principle number 1. Every firm is different. Every firm is different. Now, they're all going to be kind of the same, but how each firm operates can be varied greatly. So just because you had a friend make partner at another law firm, or maybe you have a mentor that's at another law firm and they're giving you advice on what you need to do, just keep in mind that they are speaking from their own perspective, their own experience, and based upon the way that their firm works. Okay? It doesn't mean you need to discount it. It just means you need to recognize that your firm may operate differently. So knowing that, you need to figure out what the rules are, both the written rules and the unwritten rules. Because one thing I can guarantee you, no matter what firm you're at, there are 2 sets of rules. There is the written set of rules and there are the unwritten set of rules. And you have to identify what both sets are. Okay? So what am I talking about when I talk about the written rules or the formal rules? Hopefully this is obvious, but if not, let's cover it. First and foremost, there is generally some type of eligibility requirement. So for example, maybe you need to have been practicing law for 10 years. The number used to be 6 and 7. Now it's getting stretched out more, and a lot of firms have more like 9 or 10. But what's the stated eligibility? How many years do you need to have been practicing law before you are even considered eligible? Some firms also have the requirement that you need to have worked at that firm for a certain amount of time before you can be considered eligible as a partner. So if you did not lateral in as a partner, if you lateraled in as an associate or of counsel, there may be a written eligibility requirement related to how many years you have been working at the firm. And what you want to figure out on that is that calendar years. Is it based upon your anniversary start date? So you might think you've been there 3 years, but technically you've got another 6 months to go before you're eligible based upon the way it's written. So you just want to find that out. And it may not be written in a policy or a handbook or, on a piece of paper that someone can hand you, but you can always go to either your practice group leader, the managing partner, the chairperson, the COO. Someone's going to know what the eligibility requirements are, the formal set. And so you want to figure out that. You want to ask. And don't just ask, by the way, your friends on this one. Don't ask other associates because they may know, but they may not know. You want to go to the highest source that you feel comfortable with going to find out what are the formal requirements. Okay. In addition to how many years you've been there, how many years you've been practicing, another common eligibility requirement is either that you've been working full time. So does maternity leave or paternity leave or any kind of sickness or part-time work, does that impact your credits for being considered eligible? Another common one is how much you're billing, right? So sometimes you need to have met your minimum billable hours or minimum collections for so many years in a row before you're considered eligible. Again, every firm is different, but you want to know what are the formal eligibility requirements to even be considered. Because you might just be thinking, oh, well, my entire class will all be considered at once. Well, not if there's additional eligibility requirements. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to be considered, so you need to know what those are. Okay. Number 2, part of the formal written rules would be the process. So there is generally some kind of written formal process that is involved. And some firms have schedules well in advance where there are actual dates that certain things happen. Other times there may not be certain dates set a year out or even 6 months out, but there are general months that you're aiming for. So first and foremost, when is the partnership vote? There's always a vote. So when is it? What month is that going to happen in? And then you want to back up from there. Again, every firm is different, but there's generally a process in place. So sometimes it involves you nominating yourself, where you say, yes, I'm interested, and you are then required to jump through stated hoops. Sometimes at firms, it is a matter of all the partners getting together and just having a general discussion as to who they think would be appropriate to put up for partner that year. In other firms, you need another partner to nominate you. And in some firms, it starts with just the practice group leaders identifying who they think within their group should be put up. But you want to know that process. And very rarely is that actually written down. Sometimes the eligibility requirements, those are written down. It's hard to find the process, but you want to know what it is, so start asking about it. And if you're concerned that asking about it is in any way going to make you look bad, like who does she think she is to be asking these questions? Here's the thing. If you're asking about partnership, it shows that you are interested, it shows that you are committed, and it shows that you want to continue to grow within that firm. It also shows that you want to do the right things. Now, it might rub some people the wrong way if you start asking these questions too early, or sometimes firms want to say, oh, well, if you just do good work, you'll make it. But look, if that's truly going to upset someone that you want to know the actual rules, that might be a sign you're not in the best firm. What you're going to find is that for the most part, this is actually going to be seen as a positive thing. They will like that you are being forward thinking. So don't be afraid to seek out these answers. Okay, so with the process, another thing that is common is that either there might be some applications or some interviews. If that's the case, you're going to want to get your hands on a copy of an application. It doesn't mean you're going to get the exact same one the year you're up, but you want to see what they've looked like in the past. And so again, I personally would go straight to the source, someone that is in an authority position to ask for a copy from the past. If you can't get that though, or you feel like, well, I'm not quite there, you can always ask someone that's already been through the process. So a junior partner would be a great person to ask, what was asked on the application, or do you even have a copy of it so that I can see it? Same with the interviews. If there's going to be an interview process, you want to know who you're meeting with, and you may not get exact names, but you should know, is it a committee? Is it the board? Is it certain practice group leaders? Is it other partners? That you should know, even if you don't know the specific person or name. But you want to know what that process looks like. So again, you want to figure out eligibility, and you want to figure out the process and timing. So that is rule number one under principle number one. Every firm is different. Know the rules. Okay, but as I said, it's not just a matter of the formal rules. It's also a matter of the informal rules, the unwritten rules. Okay. There's a few different things that come up here that I want you to be thinking about. And the first is, how often or ever have exceptions been made? Right? So just because there are written eligibility rules, to the extent that you're aware that maybe some people got through in exceptions, right? Maybe they had not practiced at the firm for as long as they were required. Or maybe they had not actually hit their hours or their collections. Maybe they were not full-time the entire time, but they still got full credit. You're going to find this out by just talking to others. And so you want to spend time asking associates that have been there for a while, senior associates, asking junior partners. And depending on your relationship with your practice group leader or others in management, just asking, so have exceptions ever been made? Can you think of any times when exceptions have been made? And the reason why you want to know this is because a lot of times, and I feel like, you guys know how I feel about this, I feel like the men are the ones that often get the exceptions because they ask for them. And women and minorities oftentimes, they see the rules and they're like, well, that's the rule. And they don't ask. And so then it can be really infuriating when someone gets an exception and you didn't. Because firms do not do a good job of saying, oh, well, this person has asked for an exception. We should consider everyone that would also be eligible under that exception. No, they just consider the one person. So if exceptions have never been made before, then that's a pretty good indicator that an exception would not be made for you. But if there are examples where exceptions were made, you want to get as much detail as possible as to those circumstances, just so that you know. It doesn't mean you're going to ask for an exception, but you want to know the lay of the land and how exceptions have been made in the past and why, and whether or not you think that that is important for you. Okay. The other thing that is often not written, but definitely comes into play, how many people are in your class? How many people are in your class? So if you're in a law firm and you're in a lockstep program, depending on how big your firm is, you may have 30 or 40 people technically in your class. And if your firm does not have a track record of making 30 to 40 people partner every year, then just because you're eligible and just because you've got the same numbers and the same qualifications and the same background and civic involvement as others that have made partner, you may not if the numbers don't line up that year overall, right? That is unwritten. No one really puts that on paper, but when they get into the room to make the decision, it is discussed and it is very important and it impacts what happens. So if you have a lot of people up for partner in your class, it may be harder to make partner that year. Similarly, if you have a lot of people up for partner in your practice group, so maybe there's only 10 people in your class, but 5 of you are in the same practice group, that might impact your ability to make partner that year. So you want to keep in mind, again, how many people are in your class, how many people are in your group that will be eligible, because that's going to impact what we talk about with number 3, principle number 3. Okay, so how many are in your class? How many are in your group? Another one is, do you need a sponsor? Again, this isn't a written rule, but there are plenty of firms where if you're not working for someone that is considered a rainmaker or someone super important to the firm that is coming in and sponsoring you, it may be hard for you to make partner unless all other stars align, right? So do you need to hitch yourself to someone else's wagon is what I'm saying. Some firms, that's very important, and you need to find that out. And again, I guarantee you that is not going to be written. It is not going to be a formal eligibility requirement, but it can 100% keep you from getting a partnership election if you don't have that sponsorship and other people do. So you want to find out, is that really something that happens? Another is, let's say that the formal requirements say for eligibility, you have to have billed at least 1,600 hours and, collected $300,000 for 4 years in a row. But the unwritten rule is different, right? So let's say that technically you're eligible. So maybe there's a stated goal of what you need, but the truth is that you're not actually going to be considered for partner unless you've hit certain baselines. And maybe that is 2,000 hours a year billables and $500,000 collections. Again, I'm completely making this up, but the whole point is, just because there is a number written down in the formal eligibility requirements does not mean that that actually makes you eligible. It just means that your name gets to be put on a piece of paper for first round considerations. If there is a truly different set of baseline expectations and numbers, you need to know what those are. Otherwise, you're going to be upset when you hit those numbers and you're like, well, they said it was this. There actually may be a different set of rules when it comes to considering partner from an informal basis. And then last, although I could probably come up with a ton of examples, I'm just trying to come up with the ones that show up the most often, is what does the health of the firm look like? And what are the profits per partner? If the firm didn't have a great year, that very well may impact whether or not you make partner. And if your firm is obsessed with profits per partner, most AmLaw 200 law firms are currently obsessed with profits per partner, and that's why there's this income equity tier. If that's the case, you want to know what that looks like. And it's kind of like the numbers in your class or your group. It's something that you don't have control over, but it's something that you want to just kind of watch for and be aware of, that although that is not a written rule, it can 100% impact your ability to make partner. So the idea is just to gather as much data as possible, both formal and informal, and you just do that through conversations. And some of those are official requests, and others are just, having drinks, having lunch. Don't be shy. Get out and start talking to people and asking these questions. And it doesn't have to be, a 30-minute interview. You can ask one question here and there. So it doesn't have to look like, you're obsessed with this. So each firm is different. Know the rules, gather data. All right. Principle number 2. Do not wait until you are up for partner to start doing all of these things. You have waited way too long, and it may very well be too late if you wait until the year you are up to actually start taking action and figuring all of this out. So let's say you're up this year and you're like, oh no, I've not done anything she said in principle number 1 and I'm up. Now what? Just know, I still want you to follow what I'm getting ready to tell you, especially in number 3. But just know, if you don't make it, you now have the tools to work on it for the following year. But if you are 2 or 3 years out, you want to get on this now. I think if you're more than 3 years out, honestly, it's okay for you to have a general idea of the rules, But otherwise, this really shouldn't be too much of a focus for you. It's in the 3 years leading up that you want to start having a plan. Okay, so don't wait until the year you're up. And here's a few reasons why. First, most law firms have lookbacks. So they don't just look at your information the year that you're up. Some firms look at a 2-year snapshot. Most firms look at a 3-year snapshot, but I know some that go back all the way to 5 years. And the 5 years, that often is more for if you're going straight to equity, where they don't have the multiple tiers. If there's multiple tiers and you've been an associate, it's hard to look back too far because every year can be so different because your billing rate keeps going up and your write-offs should be, improving. So it's hard to get a really good average, but you want to know what's the look back, and that's really what's going to be important for you. So if there's a 3-year look back period and your numbers need to work for all 3 years, you got to start focusing on that 3 years in advance, not year of. And then you also want to be working on building your partnership resume. Now, your firm may not ask for a resume or an application. I've actually got resume in quotation marks over here, but you guys can't see that. I'm talking in a microphone, not video. It's still crucial because it kind of goes back to either the eligibility or the informal piece, but every firm generally has some type of expectation as to what makes you a good quality candidate. Some firms care about your leadership potential and your law firm activity. So they want to see that you have been on a committee or that you were very involved in a blog or maybe a summer associate activity mentor. Maybe it was participating or helping lead up some type of charity event. Again, this goes back to you need to figure out what the formal and informal rules are. But if you need some type of leadership or firm activity, at least one thing to put on your, resume, you got to work on that in advance. So you may need to raise your hand. You may need to ask to be put on a committee. It may not just be given to you. So if that's something that the firm considers important, then it's important to start looking for opportunities, identifying what you see as important and asking for it. My very first foray, into management was when I was an associate. I went to the diversity chair and said, I really want to be on the diversity committee. What do I need to do for you to consider me for that role? And he told me. He basically interviewed me on the spot and said, we don't really have room right now, but I've never really put an associate on there. And so then I also talked to the chairman. I wasn't trying to go around the diversity chair's back, but I went to the chairman and said, hey, I talked to the diversity chair and I would really like a seat on the diversity committee. And here's why I think I would be a great candidate and I would love to know how to be considered. So if anything comes up and you know of other opportunities similar to that, let me know how I can get involved. And they did start giving me little bitty things I could do here and there. And within 2 years, they put me on the committee. They may not have done that had I not raised my hand and asked. Okay. All right. So that's one. Another is, again, I think I just talked about this, which is your billable hours and collections. If there is going to be a look back, if there is a minimum that is maybe even higher than the formal rules, you want to make sure that you're hitting those numbers and that you're really strong in that department. And you don't want to just barely hit it, right? If you are really gunning to make partner and you want to make sure you're a shoo-in, don't just hit the minimums, because if there are a lot of people in your group or your class and you just hit the minimums, you're more likely than not to be considered part of the group that's just not as strong. So the stronger your numbers, the better. So some firms also want to look at the types of matters you worked on and how lucrative it is to the firm. So for example, if you are working on really high level corporate securities, M&A work, and that is one of the most important parts of the firm, and someone else is in maybe the labor and employment department that has a ton of rate pressure, and the firm is already trying to figure out how to make it, be profitable within the firm model, you're going to have a better chance if you're over on the corporate group than the L&E group. That said, there's still stuff you can do about that. So let's say you're in that L&E group where there are issues. Well, you want to figure out who are the most lucrative clients, who are the partners that are considered to be the most profitable for the firm. And you want to make sure that you are getting to work on those matters and getting to work with that partner. And again, that's going to likely involve you raising your hand and saying, I really want to work on this matter. I really want to work for this client. I really want to work with this partner. But that can then help you when you're up for partner. So you just need to keep that in mind. How lucrative is it? If you're doing great work, but it's for a group or a partner or a client that is not seen as profitable to the firm, you've got to start getting off that as soon as possible or really diversifying your portfolio, because you're going to be seen more as needed in an of-counsel staff role, not a partnership role. And that may be hard to hear, but a lot of associates just assume that if they're doing work and getting, it's billed and collected, that's all that matters, but it's not. You really need to know how profitable, how lucrative that work is for the firm. And you're probably not going to just know that. The firm's probably not going to be telling you that they're really struggling to figure out how that partner and how that work fits within the model. So again, that goes back to keeping your eyes and ears open and asking lots of questions. Another is the ability to bring in business. Some firms just want to see that you've been a great worker, that you're really intelligent and smart. Others want to see that you've actually brought in business. If you have no business that you've brought in, you're absolutely not going to be considered for partner. Again, this goes back to every firm is different. Know the rules within your firm. But if you need to be able to show an ability to bring in business, that's hard work, especially for an associate. So you're going to need a plan and really be working that plan hard for 3 years, if not earlier, to show that you can bring in business, even if you don't have a big book now. So that's why don't wait until you're up, because you can't land a large book of business, at the last minute. That's something that you really have to work on. And then last, a common consideration is your experience and your oversight of other attorneys. So if you have always been the one really doing the work and you're not overseeing a team, you're not out there, for litigation, they may want to see that you've been in court. They probably don't want to see that you have trial experience just because so few attorneys have trial experience, unless maybe you're at an insurance defense firm or somewhere else where they see a lot more trials. But what's really the expectation of what your experience and supervision and oversight is? And again, the reason you want to ask these questions and know is because if that is important, you've got to be raising your hand and asking for the work. So you need to be going to your practice group leader saying, I've not been taking enough depositions and I'm going to be up for partner and I really need to make sure this happens. So how do I make sure this happens? What can we staff me on so that I can get this experience? Another question would be, how do I lead a team? Have I not received that opportunity yet because you guys don't see me as competent enough to do it? Or is it just a matter of how the chips have fallen? Because if it's the latter, we really need to get strategic about making sure I have that opportunity. You have to be responsible for your career and your promotions. You cannot rely upon other partners or your practice group leader or anyone else in the firm to be thinking about your trajectory and how you're going to succeed. You have to take ownership, and you need to be considering all of these things and raising your hand and asking for every opportunity that you need to help set you up for partnership. Okay, see, we're already at 30 minutes and I'm just now hitting number 3. So we definitely are not going to get to number 4, but number 3 is not super long. Okay, here's principle number 3. It's called an election for a reason. It's called an election for a reason. All right, so you're going to be elected into partnership. What that means is you've got to politic. You may not like that. You may not want to do it, but you have to. I mean, if you really want to make sure that you're a shoe-in for partner, you have to work on what your political campaign is going to look like. The good news is, you don't have to go give stump speeches or hand things out, anything like that. But don't just sit on your laurels and wait to see what the outcome is. You've got to politic. So again, who has a say? If the board of directors has the ultimate say, and it's not just a rubber stamp, you want to make sure that you know every single one of those people. You want to make sure that you are finding ways to at least have a conversation with them. Maybe it's at the firm retreat. Maybe it's a meeting. I get you may be in different offices. You have to find a way to get to know them. Even if it means calling them on the phone saying, hey, we've never actually had an opportunity to meet, and I just wanted to introduce myself. If they're going to have a say in the decision, they need to know your name, your face, and have had a conversation with you before. If it's your practice group leader that's making that initial, you need to make sure you have a great relationship with your practice group leader. If there are committees, again, you want to make sure that you have met with every single committee member, whether it's going out for lunch, dinner, drinks, just stopping by their office, occasionally reaching out. And you don't have to tell them that, hey, will you please vote for me for partner? But you need to be making sure that you have a relationship with every single person. Do not let someone in the room that has a say over your partnership not know who you are and say, now, who is that and what do they do? That's off the table. Think about now how you're going to get in front of them and know them. The other thing that you want to do once you've got an established relationship, is at least 2 years out. And this is going to make some people uncomfortable, but it's still important that you do it. And it's not going to hurt your partnership eligibility or consideration. It's just that when people get uncomfortable, they don't know what to do with it. You want to ask, you want to say, I know I'm up for partner next year and I know you're part of that process. I'm just curious, as of right now, I know you can't guarantee anything, but as we're sitting here today, are there any objections that you have? Are there any concerns that you have where you would not want to put me up or you would not want to vote for me? You want to find out now. If they have objections, if they have concerns, you want to know on the front end. And if they're not willing to be honest with you, again, that's just says something about that person in your firm. But you want to give them the opportunity to give you feedback that you can use and start working on well in advance. This is why so many people get frustrated that they're up for partner, don't make partner, and for the first time ever hear why they didn't make partner when it was never communicated before. Again, it would be nice if firms, would think these things through and communicate well in advance, but it's really up to you to take that role on for yourself because you're taking care of yourself and go find that out. Go ask for it. Even if your evaluations have always been stellar and everyone says you're doing a great job, you need to be in charge of asking these hard questions and forcing people to either lie to you or give you an honest answer. Do you have any objections? Is there any reason why you would not fully support my partnership? And then it's important to say, again, you want a relationship. You want to say, well, I would like to ask for your support in partnership process. And that's kind of like a little sales thing, but you're trying to get their buy-in. You're trying to get their commitment because when people commit, they tend to not pull back on that. So to the extent that you can get an oral commitment, not that they're going to guarantee your partnership, but that they are going to support you in the partnership process, right? That's the key. Okay, so we're going to wrap that up. And again, even if you are up this year and you're like, oh, I didn't do any of number 1 or number 2, you can still do that third part, which is to go now. Even if the election is in December and we're now in August and you're like, oh crap, I want you to go now and ask the people that you have relationships with that have decision-making authority, do you see any reason why you wouldn't support me or put me up? Or do you see any potential objections? And let them tell you. That will help you with your expectations so that if you don't make partner in December, that you're not really angry, really frustrated, and just, want to, throw in the towel. Because a lot of times when people don't make partner the first round, they're out. When the truth is you can maybe make it the next year. And it's not that people are cold-hearted and don't like you and didn't communicate with you. Everybody is so busy and no one is thinking of you the way you're thinking of you. So what I'm hoping I can do today with this podcast episode is show you that you can take ownership of it and you can highly increase your odds and your awareness well in advance so that you can correct these things so that when you are up for partner, you have as great a shot as possible. Okay. I've put all of this together in a checklist. So if you would like to have the checklist of what all you should be doing with timelines, you can go to hustleandflowpodcast.com/28 and you can download a free checklist. So if you are not an associate but know of other associates, tell them to listen to this podcast episode. Tell them to download the free checklist so that they can have a plan moving forward. All right. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to connecting soon. Are you feeling stuck or frustrated in your career? Are you exhausted from trying to balance so many competing demands? Do you have big dreams and goals, but no time to focus on them? Then join me in a small group of female attorneys for the Life and Law in Balance retreats at Miraval. They're coming up in September. To learn more and register, go to lifeandlawinbalance.com. I'd love to meet you there.